If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Scenario. It's a Tuesday morning, 25 American cities, no warning, no declaration of war, coordinated attacks hitting grocery stores, transit hubs, and soft targets in Dallas, Phoenix, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, and beyond, all within a 90-minute window. Cell networks go dark in 3 metro areas. Emergency services are overwhelmed before the second wave hits. Governors are calling for National Guard deployments that were already stretched thin. Hospital systems declare mass casualty events simultaneously. The power grid in 2 regions begins to destabilize as a cyber attack hits water treatment infrastructure in the Northeast. And the faces behind it, American addresses, American IDs, people who came in through the open border, people radicalized in American schools, people embedded in American institutions for years. This is the scenario intelligence analysts like Khalid Muhammad have been gaming out. And tonight we pull back the curtain on what we already know is coming. Before we go any further, though, quick word from tonight's sponsor. On January 5th, the Department of Energy committed $2.7 billion to restore domestic uranium enrichment. It's not politics, that's national security. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium a year and produces less than 1 million. That means we're dependent on foreign suppliers for the fuel that powers our grid and supports our defense systems. Atomic Minerals trades as ATMMF in the U.S. and ATOM in Canada. The leadership team includes members behind the $654 million Rough Rider uranium sale to Rio Tinto. They control 4 100% owned uranium projects in the Colorado Plateau, one of America's most productive uranium regions. If you want to learn more, check the link in the description. Thanks again to Atomic Minerals for sponsoring tonight's episode. Now let's talk about the real enemy. The open border destabilization pipeline is the primary enemy system driving the crisis we are covering tonight. This is not a theory. It's a documented, operationalized mechanism that exploited America's own immigration architecture to flood the country with unvetted individuals, including thousands of known and suspected terrorists. National Counterterrorism Center Director Joe Kent confirmed under oath in December 2025 that 18,000 known and suspected terrorists were admitted in the United States under the Biden installation. The destabilization doesn't stop at the border. It feeds into radicalization networks, ideological insurgency operations, and institutional pressure campaigns. ISIS and Al-Qaeda are the secondary actors riding this pipeline, inspiring, directing, and financing actors already positioned inside American cities. What they want is simple: collapse of confidence in American institutions, fragmentation of the social fabric, and a population too confused and demoralized to resist. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News. It's February 23rd, 2026, and I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friends Randy Nance, Jeff MD, and former Congressman Ted Yoho. So quickly with the bottom line up front, 9/11 2.0 complex coordinated terrorist attacks on 25 plus American cities are no longer a hypothetical. The internal destabilization warfare designed to weaken America without a formal invasion is already underway through subversion, infiltration, demographic pressure, ideological insurgency, and institutional capture. So why does this matter? Well, the long war has shifted inside our borders, and most Americans have no idea the battlefield has already moved to their cities, schools, and institutions. If we don't name it and fight it now, the window closes. So what are we covering tonight? The institutional and demographic mechanics of internal collapse, the verified terror infiltration pipeline Biden left behind, what 9/11 2.0 actually looks like on American soil, and what every patriot can do right now. So moving into segment number 1, it's titled Institutional Capture, How the Machinery of America Was Turned Against Itself. The most dangerous battlefield in the long war is not a street corner or a border crossing. It's the institution where policy, curriculum, media, and law enforcement priorities are quietly redirected by people who are placed there deliberately over years, not months. When the infrastructure of a nation starts producing outcomes that weaken its own defense, failing to vet terrorists, criminalizing speech that questions open borders, and treating national security advocates as extremists, the institution itself has become a weapon pointed inward. America is not losing ground because its enemies are stronger. It's losing ground because its own systems have been captured, redirected, and turned into instruments of managed decline that never required a foreign army to operate on our soil. So I'm going to bring the rest of the crew on stage right now. And Jeff, I'm going to come to you first. What are the most concrete examples of institutional capture that have directly damaged America's national security posture in the 4 years of the Biden installation and the first year of the Trump administration?
Well, you could probably point to a number of things, but I think taking our military away from being a military and turning it into some sort of social institution. The military's job is to kill people and break things. That's it. Very simple. It's not to be a social experiment for gays or transgenders or, DEI. And because they made it that, they lowered the standards. And then we had we've got a military that could do push-ups, for crying out loud. And thankfully now that's changed. Now that we have a real, someone really in charge who can walk the walk. But yeah, they undermined our military significantly.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I'm just going to move us over to another stage here, and going to Ted next, because you were in office as a congressional rep for Alachua County. How does ideological capture at the bureaucratic level actually translate into policy outcomes that benefit foreign adversaries and domestic destabilization networks, Ted?
Oh, it plays right into their hands. If you look at the policies, and it depends on the administration, obviously, and the makeup of the House and the Senate, but in an era of Obama, that was one of the things that inspired me to run. I called it the Obamanization of America, when he said we were 5 days away from fundamentally transforming America, 5 days for his inauguration, his first one. And then you look at the machine he brought in there, which is still there around President Biden, I call him. When you have those kind of policies that come in, they infiltrate everything, the deep state. And then you look at the face of the military, how he ran out, long-term serving military, and promoted from within the people that were on his ideological side. When you see that, you get it in our military, you get it in the bureaucracies up there that have stayed after even Biden left this time. It's in our schools. It's in all the social programs. USAID, which was founded under Kennedy in 1964, that was focused on agriculture, education, and humanitarian need, got into this woke ideology to the point where I've been out of Congress for 4 years, and I was still getting calls from ambassadors around the world saying, your policies are driving a wedge between the United States and our country because of the transgender, the LGBT, all that garbage, DEI and wokeism. And it was intentional by Obama and the people that were controlling him and got him in office. And I think I saw it starting under Clinton. So it's infiltrated through all that. And the thing that your listeners, and I know you guys know this, they need to understand this. With Trump in there, it is but a pause. If he loses the majority, this all starts reverting back to DEI. You're going to have Rachel Levine or Ralph Levine as your HHS secretary, and Sam Britton or the likes of him as in charge of spent nuclear waste. And this is not the face of America. This is the face of a radical agenda that's being promoted, not just by people within, but your adversarial nations, China, Iran, Russia, and all those other ones.
Yeah, very well said, Ted. So, Randy, when we look at vetting failures, 18,000 known and suspected terrorists admitted under Biden. That doesn't include all the special interest aliens, which is another couple 100,000. But in your opinion, Randy, how much of that was incompetence versus intentional policy design?
Well, I mean, I think everybody on this show knows exactly. It's 0% accidental, or oops, we made a mistake. Yeah, no, that isn't it. All this was intentional. We've heard J.J. Carroll say it. Ted just touched on it. We've had numerous guests on this show say the same thing. These are intentional acts. Once Obama came into office, and I've said it also since then, I mean, basically, we've seen all this degrade to where it is today. And the problem you have, just like with what Jeff talked about in the military, the problem with that is, and Ted, but once you run all the senior leadership out of there, or the people that are senior, who's going to know what right looks like anymore? Like I'm talking about in tactics and strategies and techniques and all the stuff that we use to be successful as a military. That's because all the old timers around know and knew what right looked like. They're the ones that held that standard. And then when you get rid of all those and you hire all the people that really, well, let's just say they're not, they wouldn't be considered, top performers or anything like that. That's not what you want, obviously. And it's not just the military. You can look at law enforcement. We can take it on down to the federal agencies. All of that strips away all the good stuff that we've done and all of our techniques to where, it looks like no one knows what they're doing, and which is where we are today. Because again, everything that pops up, I'm like, the next time I hear it's an intelligence failure or, the guy was on our radar, they're just lying. They are lying. And so the problem is we don't have the mechanism to go up there and hit a big button, like I said, boom, where we then go through everybody on the Hill. I don't know what that is, but it's very loud. We don't have a mechanism to go up there and go through everybody on the Hill and go through all their financial records, all their communications. And, if in fact we find some that aren't committing fraud, that aren't committing treason, that aren't committed some other crimes that would definitely be more than just frowned upon, they need to be held accountable. All those people need to go. And if they don't, if there are any that has it, then they get to keep their job. Otherwise, we move on, and certainly, what do you think about if they committed treason to the point it's considered high treason and there's only one sentence for it? Let's get it on with it. Because if we do that, this won't happen for a very long time afterwards. But right now, it's been happening for probably 200 years. It's just gotten to the point now they don't even care if you know.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the first audience poll tonight. If you think people are going to be held accountable for all the heinous things they've done to our country, especially public officials, put a 1 in the live chat. If, on the other hand, you've been blackpilled and you don't think any of them are going to be held responsible, put a 0 in the live chat. So, Jeff, coming back to you, what levers does the Trump administration actually have to reverse institutional capture inside agencies that have been compromised for years and not months?
Well, they have to fire a lot of people. I mean, quite simply, the problem, the civil service was created in the after the 1880s, 1890s, because it used to be whoever got elected, they fired everybody and put their own people in power. And the idea was to create a permanent civil service that was beyond politics, except our civil service isn't beyond politics. They are politics. And I don't think it's the rank and file. It's not the low level people, but I think once you hit mid to upper management, it's very, very political. I saw that in the CIA when I was there, because we always prided ourselves in being apolitical. Didn't matter who the president was, didn't matter if it was Republican or Democrat. Our job was to provide intelligence to the policymakers so that ideally they wouldn't be surprised and they can make better policy decisions. But it's become, it's now to the point where they just want, they cook the books in favor of whoever's in office. And they've done that for Democrats and Republicans the same. But that needs to go away. We need to get back to here are the facts. Sorry if you don't like them, but these are the facts. Instead of this, well, we'll give you the facts you want and we'll bury the facts you don't want. And that's what gets people killed by the thousands. If you go to war over bad intel, you have failed.
Well said. Well said. As you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, all of the challenges, to Title II and the executive's powers. And, Title II is pretty clear that the executive has control over this, but these liberal judges who are not voted in place, appointed for life, partisan judges are really screwing the system up. So, Ted, last question to close out the first segment. From a preparedness standpoint, when the institutions that are supposed to protect you are compromised, what's the first line of response for the American community?
The American community, it goes back to education, and that's why programs like yours are so important to educate people what's going on. This is not a game. This is for real. This is here now. And vote people into office that are going to do what they say they're going to do, and they're going to be there for America. They're not there for a political agenda. They're not making all the noise on the Epstein files or UFOs or the dogs in Muslim communities. They are there looking at the very basic things. There's 6 existential threats to America, and I failed to see any of them working on those. Our debt, China, immigration without assimilation, and the list goes on. And what Americans can do is, number one, you got to be engaged. You've got to be involved in this. Like I said, you don't have a time for a repeat with what's coming, and it could be tomorrow. I've got friends that lived in countries where this one guy lived in 3 different countries where the economy or their currency collapsed overnight. That could happen here. People don't think so. But you need to think, why is gold so high? Why is silver so high? It's because of the uncertainty going on. So it comes back to us, we the citizens, be educated, be involved, and throw the people in there throw the people out that are in there that aren't doing what they say. These are times for tough love, and be prepared.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Remind me after the show, Ted, to send you that $20 on Cash App for saying all the nice things about our podcast. Appreciate that very much. All right. So moving into segment number 2, the border pipeline, 18,000 known terrorists inside the wire. So NCTC Director Joe Kent's December 2025 congressional testimony confirmed what border patriots have been warning about for years. 18,000 known and suspected terrorist ties to ISIS and Al-Qaeda were admitted into the United States under the Biden administration / installation. And that number does not include the unknown hundreds of thousands who came in illegally through the open border. The border was not just left open through negligence. The vetting systems were deliberately dismantled, as Randy mentioned. The processing timelines that previously required 18 months to 2 years were compressed to nothing. And entry was, in many cases, actively facilitated, creating a pre-positioned threat network embedded inside American cities right now. The scenarios that intelligence analysts war game for 9/11 2.0 coordinated attacks on 25 plus American cities are not built on hypotheticals. They're built on the known presence of these individuals, their radicalization pipelines, and the inspiring and directing capabilities that ISIS and Al-Qaeda have maintained through encrypted apps and social media throughout this entire period. So, Randy, I'm going to come to you first on segment number 2. How does a 22-year-old in Maryland pledging loyalty to ISIS and planning mass shootings against Jewish communities connect directly to the larger pre-positioned threat network that Joe Kent mentioned the NCTC is tracking?
Well, I mean, it's, being youthful is a strange thing, right? And certainly in that age frame, which you just mentioned, the 18 to 22-year-olds, for one, we know, and so do the bad guys, that they're the easiest to radicalize very, very quickly and then almost permanently, right? They learn at an early age and boom. But we saw the same thing because it's one, we've seen the white man being stripped down, or Westerners, period, right? And certainly in this country, and then all of our things like, being exceptional in math and school, or, doing a good job, all this stuff becomes racist, right? And they strip away all those things. And just like now you see all these kids that want to be transgender because it's not cool to be a white kid in this country anymore. And I'm not saying all of them were white, but, there's been quite a few, and that's part of the problem. And I read something where they say that is why some of them chose that path, because it was in society at this point that was more celebrated, right, than being somebody that did a good job and earned your way through. So my point to that is, when you strip all those things away, and then we've got all this stuff on the internet, and they're constantly talking about how America's racist, it was never a good country, and how we're on stolen land and everything else. Next thing you know, somebody's watching the internet, and this kid sees and goes, I want to make a name for myself, or I want to do something. And again, from that 18 to 22, another thing we know, and this is a human thing, I think it is, but it's certainly predominant through those years. But we all want it, right? Because everybody wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so then they look out and see, okay, what's popular right now? And apparently this jihad thing is. So some people are going to draw to that. It's just unfortunate. We saw it early on in Afghanistan, or even after Iraq kicked off. We had people go over and join Al-Qaeda and even ISIS at some point. So it's not surprising. It's just a matter of how many are going to do that, as long as all this stuff keeps rolling around out here in the social media and through media and movies and commercials and everything else. So, I think that's what leads to that type of thing. And I'm sure we'll see more of it. And then again, I'm sure these guys are on the radar, right? But they're able to also reach out and speak, probably just like some of the others have communicated with ISIS folks or whoever their recruiters are online. And, again, this kid's probably disenfranchised, and he's of the perfect age to get to if you wanted to radicalize.
Yeah, great answer as always. Just a quick thing here for you, Randy. If when you said everybody wants to be part of something special, that was a great opportunity for you to say, like SDN, and I would have sent you $20 on Cash App as well, and not just Ted. So just keep that in mind, okay?
Duly noted.
So speaking of Ted, or actually Jeff, I got my order mixed up here. Jeff, how are ISIS and Al-Qaeda using the open border as a force multiplier, the previously open border as a force multiplier, for the inspirational radicalization model that is replacing the older centralized attack planning model?
Well, it allowed them to bring in a lot more people. I mean, they could just, they could swamp it. And even if they're not all fully radicalized, you bring in 1,000 and say only 800 are fully radicalized, or 200 come here and go, I kind of like America. I may want to hang here for a while and not blow it up. But it just allowed them, it's basically troop movements. It's logistics. They were able to get a lot more people in here. If you think about the 9/11 attacks, there were, I can't remember what the final number were there, like 19, 20 guys. And it was a process, and they had to go through a long time to get them documented, to get them over here to support them logistically. And then they trained, and then they executed the attacks. Well, this one, you can bring 100. They could have, when Biden was in office, they could have brought 100 people in a day, and probably did. So, yeah, it just made it easier. They could just bring in mass bodies.
Yeah, true story. So I got a little bit out of order in the brief coming to you, Ted. When Joe Kent said that 18,000 known or suspected terrorists is just what they've identified so far, in your mind, what does that actually signal about the real scale of the threat that hasn't been quantified yet?
I tell you, the real scale of that threat is, I don't think anybody knows. I mean, you go back to Mayorkas, and he's telling us the border is secure. Kamala Harris, it's secure. And Biden, he didn't have a clue. We don't have how many people that came in. We just know the ones they talk about. And a lot of this is just focused on the southern border. The northern border is as porous, if not more. than the Southern. And we rallied against that up there when I was in Congress, and everybody was focused on down south on the southwest border. And, we've seen it. In fact, I stopped a boat off of Florida with me and another person, and it had 25 to 30 people on there. And they said they were from Cuba, and I called the Coast Guard. Coast Guard came out. We stopped them and held them there. I wound up having to file their prop. And when I looked at them, I couldn't, I'm from Florida. We know Latinos. We know I got a lot of Cuban friends. These people look Middle Eastern to me. And so how many came in? Who knows? The thing we need to do is we need to harden our background checks now and start getting them out of here. And this would have continued had not Trump gotten to office. We didn't need a new program. We didn't need any more money. We just need somebody that had the backbone to say, we're ending it. And then we need to sift through what's left and get these people out. And I think it was Randy was talking about treason. I think it's time you play hardball. If you do treason against the United States of America, it's the death penalty, period.
Yeah. So just so you know, Ted, 3 times last year, I said that these treasonous SOBs needed to be charged, tried, convicted, and face the death penalty. And 3 times I was suspended by X.
Oh my goodness. I just did that. I've given my $20 back.
Well, there's something messed up with X's streaming right now. But anyway, this is post Elon Musk buying it, by the way. And I reached out to somebody I know there and I said, you got to tell me, like, what's up with the pink, purple hair freak saying that they wish the bullet had hit Trump in the head and killed him. But if somebody like myself suggests that we actually follow the law, I'm inciting violence. Like, get your head out of your ass, basically. Speaking of heads, by the way, sorry, go ahead, Ted.
Well, that's just it. They don't follow the law. We've let it slide for so long. I had gotten asked by an organization before Trump got elected the second time, what would you do on the fentanyl crisis? And I said, number one, I'd get rid of the war on drugs because it's ineffective, and I would take that money and deal with the supply or the demand side on America in treatment with people. But on the other side, on the supply side, I had a great conversation with the Prime Minister of Singapore, and I asked him if he had a drug problem. He goes, I can't afford one, Congressman. I've got a country of 5 million people. 3 million are Singaporeans, 2 million are immigrants. If you're caught bringing drugs into my country, it is the death penalty. Wow. And that's what I suggested to the people that were doing policies for Trump. And think about this. If that was our policy, it is announced, people have to make a choice. If I go to America bringing drugs in, I stand a chance of getting killed, death penalty. Trump's kind of doing that with blowing up the boats. But I like to be out front and tell people, this is what you can expect if you come in here. You wouldn't have to do many, and I think would be very effective. And I have no patience for people that want to keep breaking the law and bypassing the law. At this point in time in this country, we can't afford to do that.
Yeah. So second audience poll of the night. For those of you who second Ted's motion, put a number 2 in the live chat. Let's see how many number 2s. I'm expecting we hopefully will have a flood of number 2s. And speaking of heads, just quickly, and I'm waiting on another batch of intel that's coming in right this minute. There were quite a few helicopters seen flying on the Mexican side of the Texas border today. 22 incidences that have been documented. And those helicopters were owned and manned by the cartels, and they were flying with human heads hanging off of the choppers to send a message. And I'll have more intel on that soon. Some of this stuff as it comes into me, I wait until I get it verified by a second person. Some of the stuff when it comes into me, it's very identifiable what the source was, and I can't do that to my sources. But I hopefully will have more information for y'all by the end of this podcast on the Mexico situation. So Randy, back to you again. What's the realistic assessment of law enforcement's capacity to run down 18,000 known and suspected terrorists while simultaneously managing the daily threat pipeline and also taking into account that Mayorkas let 200,000 SIAs into the country, special interest aliens, who by definition are either terrorists or associates of terrorists?
Well, first I'll say that it's probably more than that, because anytime the government, and I don't care who's in charge, comes out and gives us a number, it's usually not the right one. And point being, you remember when they first pulled out of the Afghanistan, we'd already left Iraq. Now they pull out of Afghanistan. They said we left $2 billion worth of equipment. It turns out to be 85 billion. So there's a drastic difference in what they're going to admit to what actually is happening. So we know that 18,000 roughly, and we're talking about trained individuals. So it's probably a little more than that, but it's one of the things that with this immigration thing with ICE, I wonder why we haven't targeted some of those communities, right? It's come out now while we targeted the Latino community first, because we knew this was going to happen. Of course, none of us did. And if they were still here, we'd probably be seeing some of that going on here, which is going on in Mexico. But, fortunately, apparently we got enough of the gang members out that we're not seeing that yet anyway. But the problem is they're still here. And, I'm just going to say, really, I think that, they were probably invited, because at this point, my opinion is, in 2019, they definitely, in 2020, but certainly the summer of love of 2019, in my opinion, was an attempt to start a race war. I mean, I have no doubt that's what their intent was, and they hoped that we would take the bait. Then you fast forward when we didn't, right? And then it went to the transgender thing, and they've been violent enough, but there's still not enough of them to make a difference. So they don't have a violent enough arm that's big enough. Well, let's just invite in all the jihadis, right? Because we know they have no problem killing people. They will kill their own family members in an honor killing. So that being said, I think that this is all, again, as we talked about, intentional. And all these folks were brought here for whenever they flip the switch. Because whether it's this thing that we're talking about, or it's some other type of attack, or some other kind of big event, I think that these people are now waiting, just like the George Floyd event. And whatever that is, when that happens, we're going to see the response that, is probably going to be a lot more than we ever expected. And I think that, this is, if we just look at where Europe is, the only thing that's keeping that from being here, certainly now that they let in all these people, is because we're a constitutional republic. And that is what's getting in their way, the people that want to do this one world thing. And once they ditch that, once they can get rid of our constitution, it'll be just like slick ice in a downward slope. There'll be nothing to stop us all falling off that ledge. That being said, hopefully the amount of money that we gave ICE, at some point, we need somebody to target these particular we needed to target these folks. If they're Muslims that came from other countries, certainly over the 4 years of Biden, we should be looking at them very strongly and removing a lot of those folks. The fact is, if, and we know Khalid's tracked many of them, and is still tracking to this day. If he can do that from where he is, there's no reason. And as I've said many times on this show, Chris, if our federal agencies were doing what they were designed to do in the way that they're supposed to do it, none of this would be happening. But the fact is they aren't. But regardless, we need ICE to target the jihadi population so we can at least cut some of these numbers down and find some of these real professionals that are here to kill us.
Yeah, I think everybody would second that as well. So Jeff, you get to wrap up the second segment. What should American communities in major metro areas be doing right now, given the confirmed presence of these pre-positioned threat actors, aka sleeper cells?
Well, they need to be prepared mentally and physically for what happens when they attack. It shouldn't be a surprise. You should have, you should be strapped. You should be carrying weapons for your defense. There's not going to be time to say, "Oh, wait, let me go home and get my handgun." No, it's not going to happen. So you've got to be prepared that, okay, if I go to the store today and they attack today, what am I going to do? And how am I going to do it? And you've got to be in the mindset that it's like a soldier in combat. You go out on patrol, you've got to assume you're going to have contact with the enemy. You may not, but you've got to assume and be prepared for when you do.
Yeah, true story, Jeff. All right, so that wraps up the second segment. We're fixing to go into the third segment now, ideological insurgency, the war being fought inside American schools, media, and culture. Yuri Bezmenov laid out the 4 stages of ideological subversion decades ago: demoralization, destabilization, crisis, normalization. And what is happening right now in American schools, universities, and media institutions maps almost perfectly onto stages 2 and 3, which means the window to reverse it is narrowing fast. On January 30th of this year, coordinated school walkouts using K-12 children as political instruments, supplied with slogans framed as conscience and deployed against federal immigration enforcement, demonstrated that American educational institutions are no longer neutral. They're operational nodes in an ideological insurgency that does not require a foreign army to execute. When the generation being raised inside these institutions comes of age, having been taught that America is illegitimate, its institutions are racist, and its founding documents are tools of oppression, you don't need bombs to bring the country down. You've already built the population that will do it from the inside. So coming to you first on this segment, Ted, how do the coordinated school walkouts in January of this year fit into the larger documented pattern of institutional capture inside American public education? You're on mute, Ted.
A great question, and I think it's very obvious. You have people taking advantage of useful idiots thinking that they're standing up for something, for justice, for equal rights and all that, but they're just pawns in a game of a bigger scheme. And that scheme, you know, when you look at it, when you read those things from, what was that guy's name?
Yuri Bezmenov.
Yeah, Yuri Bezmen. When you read those things, I mean, it's just following in line of how you can use these people, and they'll disrupt life in America, create chaos any way they can. And if they can use those, they can use Antifa, which is really not an organization, according to Chuck Schumer and Jerry Nadler. But if they can use those to cause that dissent and discord in this country and keep us fractured, you know, it allows for other groups to do the same thing. And this is where our educational system has failed. This is where parenting has failed for some people. The demoralization of what they're trying to do, like you said, white guilt, critical race theory, then they destabilize it. And that's what you saw up in New York. I mean, you've seen it in New York, but what you saw in Minneapolis, Chicago, and out there in LA, and they create the crisis. And we're at the crisis mode right now. Yeah, I know Trump was smart enough to pull back, as much as I don't think that was the right thing to do, but it was the right thing to do if you want to win the midterm. And then we'll have to see what goes after that, because some form of normalization. And the question is, who's that going to be? Is that going to be the Marxist communists are going to build a facade of a utopian and tell everybody how great life is? Or is it going to be the patriots that stand up for the constitutional republic? I got Theodore Roosevelt right now, and it says patriotism means to stand by the country. It does not mean to stand by the president. And one last thing he says, there's but one answer to terrorism, and it's best delivered with a Winchester rifle. Thought you might like that.
I really, really do like that. So, Randy, let me just give this to you one more time. So, Yuri Bezmenov, 4 stages of ideological subversion: demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and then normalization. So, based on that, from your perspective, where do we currently sit? Where does America sit in Bezmenov's tongue twister model?
Well, I think Ted was right. We're in the crisis part, right? We're definitely not back to the normal part, but we're well beyond the first 2 steps for sure. I mean, we are well into this. I would say quite a ways to kind of like you've said several times. I don't know that we have an easy way out of this at this point. We're such diametrically opposed. And then, you know, as they will accuse us, but the real Americans, you know, we aren't so quick to just block this guy or that girl because they're spewing off all this stuff on social media, or we're not cutting off our family members because they voted for somebody else. You know, you see that on one side, and those people are always going to blame us. But the fact is, they're the ones that just won't agree or accept anything that's not what they want. And in fact, what they want isn't even in reality. And, you know, you look at what you talked about, we're in more of the freak out, chaos, you name all of it, and weirdness, because it seems like today, and people of our age understand this, right? We feel like we just dropped into the episode of The Twilight Zone. I can hear the music right now. And, you know, things are upside down, and good is bad and bad is good. And so something has to go now for us to be able to transition to the next step, which is back to normalcy. And again, as Ted says, that's really going to depend on who's in charge when that moment happens, or who's in charge when it's finished.
Yeah. So I could be wrong, but Jeff will correct me here if I'm wrong. I think that Bezdomov's context is you go demoralization, destabilization, crisis. And then I think when he said normalization, he meant normalizing the craziness. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, I think that's what he was talking about is, yeah, there's madness, but then the madness becomes normalized because it becomes the new normal.
Well, we are watching some of that too, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at 20 years ago, if a guy said, put on a dress and said, I'm a girl, people would have laughed at him and had him committed. You know, now he runs for Congress.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? So before I
like it.
Yeah, there you go.
I was going to say we would have tossed him a football and played smear the you-know-what.
Yeah.
Then we would have had him committed.
So before I get to the next question for you, Jeff, get this into you, Randy. So when I was redoing the format for our podcast, I kept thinking to myself, is there something that I could open with that's like a narration built on the original Twilight Zone from the 1950s? You know, there's a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. But I'm not that creative, so I wasn't able to come up with something that fit the bill. So, Jeff, legit question for you here. How does demographic pressure interact with ideological insurgency to accelerate institutional breakdown in ways that are very difficult to reverse once critical mass is achieved?
You're talking about demographic pressure?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you look at Dearborn, Michigan. Okay, it went from a white affluent suburb of Detroit when the auto industry was booming, and now it might as well be part of the Middle East. And the thing is, it's hard to reverse that, because the way you would have to reverse that is for a bunch of non-Muslims to move into Dearborn, but nobody wants to, because why would you? And the thing is, once things, only in major cities do you see you can reverse that, but it has to get so bad and things otherwise get so expensive that you get gentrification. You know, you look at New York City, you look at Harlem is now it's an expensive place to live. It used to be, it used to be the hood, it used to be the ghetto. And then people who couldn't afford to live in, the good parts of Manhattan, the Upper East Side or something like that, it just started, what was acceptable zip codes started creeping north and creeping north and creeping north. And before you know it, you've got the black people in Harlem complaining about all the white people coming in and taking the houses and then driving up the prices of rent and everything else. But if there's an area where there isn't that kind of geographic pressure because there's just a limited amount of space, Manhattan's an island. It doesn't get any bigger. But in Detroit, you'll pick somewhere else to go. You'll go to Grosse Pointe, you'll go somewhere else, but you'll flee the decrepit part. And there will not be gentrification in that. Gentrification really only occurs when there's a geographic reason behind it.
Jeff, what's the percentage of Detroit's population today versus when it was at its biggest?
Oh, God, I think it's 25%, 30% maybe?
It's astonishingly
Oh
low.
yeah, it's way
Yeah.
down. Oh, Pittsburgh's the same way. Pittsburgh, you think of Pittsburgh as this huge, this big city still, and it used to have, it was number 2 in the nation for the number of corporate headquarters. And now I think, there's maybe 500,000 people, probably less.
Yeah, it's pretty much a ghost town. So Ted, I saved this one just for you. What specific mechanisms are being used to prevent American parents, legislators like you were formerly, and school boards from stopping the ideological capture of public education?
Weaponization of the Justice Department. I mean, it was so clear we saw it under Obama, but under Biden, with Merrick Garland going after the schools in Virginia, the parents crying out about teaching their kids LGBT, all this wokeism, DEI. We saw it in the military, and if you speak out, you get doxxed. You get, what they did to Neil Gorsuch. They're giving his address out, and people were showing up there, and Chucky Schumer saying, Neil Gorsuch, you have blood on your hands. And so that's what's going on, and that's what's going to continue to go on until you hold these people accountable or throw them out. And when you throw them out, make sure it doesn't come in worse. But in our society, this is where, and I mean, this is just goes back to the founding. As the founder said, to maintain a constitutional republic, you have to have a well-educated and active populace. And so it goes back to education. New York City is spending $35,000 per student. But then you look at the scores. I mean, where'd the money go? Where are the results? They must be at a Somalian luring center in Minneapolis or something. But that's, it's so obvious that people don't stand up and you just want to shake people and say, do you see what's going on here? And I'm going to stop right there before I say anything else.
I was going to ask, are we allowed to shake people like that? Because I didn't get that memo, but if we are,
I used to.
I'm all in favor of that.
Well, if you're not on camera and nobody else saw it, I mean, it's he said, she said moment, right?
Careful.
That's the trick, though.
Elon's bots will say, will say you're fomenting violence, Randy.
Hey, put your phone in the Faraday bag. That's all I could say.
No, to Commie Tube. That was Randy Nance, not Chris Evan.
They already put commercials on when I talk, Chris.
I had the CEOs from AmCham China come in, and they're moaning and complaining. I was going to say something else about how China is stealing their technology, and they keep setting up factories. And the guy from Ford was there, and he goes, they've got an F-150, looks just like ours, got a blue oval on it, but doesn't say Ford. And I says, why do you guys go there? And they go, well, it's a 1.4 billion person market. And I grabbed them by the shoulder, and I turned them around, and I says, look over here. There's 6 billion people that want your product that aren't going to steal it from you. And that's what we have to do with the American people. This is happening right in front of us. They're changing what we can say and what we can't say that go against our traditions. And, there will be a wake-up call.
Yeah, granted, I couldn't disagree with you on that one whatsoever. Just a couple really quick mentions. I'll talk more about it later on. Don't forget our friends at Carnivalt. They sponsor our podcast, carnivalt.com. If you sign up for a subscription, any level of subscription, I will give you a free Survival Dispatch News Guardians membership. Don't forget our friends. I was reaching down to my stash down here to grab more jerky, but I've eaten almost all of it. WasatchWagyu.com, discount code SD25. We're the only people who have 25% off. And speaking of discounts, we launched SDN Intel alerts today. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, you click on memberships. If you don't want to be part of the community that we've built on our Element server with all the live chats and tens of thousands of messages each week, you can pay half price, $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, and you will get daily SDN alerts. You'll get SDNS, which is Survival Dispatch Emergency Notification System alerts, and you don't have to worry about the chat stuff. So if you check out survivaldispatch.net, you will find it there. All right, survivaldispatch.news. Got too many domains. So moving into segment number 4, what coordinated attacks on 25 plus American cities actually look like. So the new terrorist playbook, confirmed by NCTC Director Kent, in addition to our own Khalid Mohammed from Command 11, does not rely on spectacular centralized operations like the original 9/11. It relies on inspirational methodology, encrypted communication, and pre-positioned individuals inside American cities who can be activated without direct operational contact with foreign command structures, making the threat nearly impossible to fully preempt. Now, I do want to add to that it is extremely hard to track sleeper cells when the sleeper cells are comprised of terrorists from multiple different terrorist organizations, because even if a message is encrypted, you see the beginning, the origin, and the end, and you know that the origin, or let's say ISIS commanders, for example, you can then make the assumption that all of the people receiving communications from that origin are ISIS disciples. But the way that they've structured sleeper cells now is there might be one or two guys from ISIS, one or two guys from Al-Qaeda, one or two guys from the Taliban, one or two guys from ISKP, and the list goes on. Makes it very, very hard to find these cells. But beyond that, once they are activated, they will absolutely be in communication with the command and control centers, most likely in Afghanistan, possibly Iran. Depends if there's anything left in Iran by the time we're done with them. And what that essentially means, if you watch the movie Hotel Mumbai, which portrays the Mumbai 2008 complex coordinated attacks that were carried out by 10 jihadis, you will have these command and control center guys watching legacy media in America, watching social media, and this time around, the jihadis will have body cams on them. So if you do the math, if you had 25 plus cities being hit by somewhere between 4 and 12 sleeper cells that may have somewhere between, let's say, 4 or 12 jihadis, it's many thousands of terrorists attacking us simultaneously. The command and control centers overseas have to be huge to be able to monitor everything and be able to say, well, hold up, don't attack target A, move to target B. Oh, hold up, there's a whole bunch of first responders heading your way. Get the VBIEDs ready, because as soon as they show up, set it off and kill all the first responders. So even though there's virtually no communication or very scattered communication up until the time they're activated, when they're activated, there will be plenty of coordination and communication going on. So a coordinated attack on 25 plus American cities, it doesn't require, say 25 foreign operatives, just to throw a number out there. It requires a radicalized network that's been seeded inside the country over years, given targets of opportunity, pipelines, and activated through encrypted apps that law enforcement can't penetrate in real time. Maybe if they put supercomputers to it, they can crack some stuff, but that's always after the fact. The NCTC's number of 18,000 tells you the seeding is already done. It doesn't matter what you want to believe or not as far as what crossed our southern border that we never touched, that we never interdicted, that we never had eyes on. Doesn't matter what that number is. 18,000 is a standing army when it comes to CCTA's, complex coordinated terrorist attacks. So the 2026 FIFA World Cup in North America, as I've mentioned already, has been flagged by the Sufyan Center, Crisis 24, and other intelligence-aligned analysts as a high-probability target, precisely because it offers the soft target, high casualty, maximum media resonance profile that the new terrorist playbook is specifically designed to exploit. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Randy, did you close out the last one, or was that Ted's closed out the last one?
I don't remember either.
Well, we'll start with Jeff then. So, Jeff, walk us through what the intelligence community's actual wargaming for a coordinated multi-city attack might look like in terms of target selection, timing, and the gaps in current defensive posture for American law enforcement.
Well, it will be coordinated probably by the FBI, because when it's domestically like that, it's a criminal action, and they're the head, criminal law enforcement agency in the land, and it would have to be run very, very closely with Homeland Security, because while the FBI looks good on TV, it's really not that big of an organization. And if you want guys on the ground with guns at a federal level without calling up the military, it's going to be Homeland Security, because you're going to have air marshals and border patrol and ICE agents and everything else, and Secret Service as well. But yeah, they're going to have to be the one taking the lead. They would they'll set up a command post. They'll have to set up a central area to basically be a clearinghouse of information. I was in Atlanta when 9/11 hit, and the FBI set it up. It was obviously on the ground in New York City, but all the phone calls, if you called in a tip, they were actually being answered in Atlanta, Georgia, because they had the infrastructure set up from the Olympic Park bombing and from the 96 Olympics, still there. So they used that infrastructure, but they'll have to be a central clearinghouse of information. And I have no clue where that would be. It's not going to be FBI headquarters. Obviously, they're shutting it down. So it may end up being in their new places out in Alabama.
Would it be potentially safe to say that nowhere is capable of doing that under our current infrastructure, because it hasn't been addressed that 25 American cities would be attacked simultaneously?
Yeah, I would say that would be a safe bet, because they're used to dealing with one, maybe two crises at a time. If you had 15, yeah, they're not set up for that.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Scary. We'd be reacting by the seat of our pants.
Yeah.
So, Ted, this 2026 FIFA World Cup, obviously it's a very specific near-term elevated threat because of just the number of people that will be there, number of people from different countries that would be there. What advice would you give Americans attending those events? What should they do that they may not normally do when they attend large public events like that?
Yeah, well, what I tell them to do is stay home, watch it on TV. But the first thing is, if you see something, say something. Again, we have to be able to speak up. If you see something that looks off, it probably is. And I think let that be known to the people in charge, and then have communications, a way to evacuate yourself and get out of there, cover somehow to protect you and the people you're with, and a strategy to get back home.
Yeah, I would just dovetail off of that, Ted, to have rendezvous points. So, you're watching the event,
Right.
Somebody goes to the restroom, the thing happens, you're separated, it's mass chaos. Where are the potential rendezvous points, so that you meet back up again? Randy, it's been a long time since you were a paramedic on an ambulance, but in your estimation, what's the realistic emergency response capacity when you're considering 25 American cities simultaneously? At what point does the system go from being strained to just collapsing?
Well, I've said all along, this is one of the reasons I believe that they had homegrown help, because of how well thought out this plan is and what it will do to the systems, right? This isn't something they came up with by themselves. You would have to have very intimate knowledge of what would, but again, it comes down to municipalities, right? And we don't know exactly which ones. We know about what size that they're looking at. So let's just take that demographic, right? How many ambulances or fire trucks or even police cars do you think are on duty at any one time in those places, right? And then I would say they might have twice that many vehicles total, maybe more, because the smaller municipalities aren't going to look like New York City, obviously. They're not going to have anywhere near the kind of resources or the money, even though, man, Danny's cutting that back. I mean, historically. So it wouldn't take, and then it goes by municipality, but you got to realize then federally and the amount of panic that will come from that many at once will supersede all that stuff, I do believe. But as each city, it's going to, so if they're even, as I've said before, if this attack goes off like that and they're even 50% successful, each one of those communities is going to be shut down for a period of time. And the problem is, the biggest problem will be when the power goes out, because then that's going to affect everyone. Certainly if it takes out the whole national grid, which has been rumored and is in the intelligence. So if that happens, you're going to see mass panic and all kinds of stuff we haven't seen in this country before. And I don't think it really, I think that in itself will overwhelm every system. You know, it's no different than a website or even a phone number. You have enough people, or let's just take when you brought up Element, right? And they started attacking with those DDSs and how many thousands of bots, it overwhelms the system. And it will do the same thing. And I think we would just see a cascading effect. I think it could be a couple weeks before we get that underhand, if that quick.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good estimation on your part. For those of you who didn't catch the context that Randy was speaking with regards to Element. Oh, we got a special guest backstage I'm fixing to bring on, by the way. But what he was referring to is when I moved our community from Signal over to my own Element server, as soon as we made it public knowledge, we had an entire month of people testing the system and beating it up. We didn't make any public announcements. As soon as I publicly announced that we were moving our community to Element for security and privacy purposes, we started getting hit with massive DDoS attacks, so distributed denial of service attacks. And nobody hits servers with DDoSs if they can access the servers, because if they can access the servers, they just nuke them and shut them down. So somebody wasn't too happy that we isolated the Guardians community in under infrastructure that they couldn't pry into. So the rumors of Khalid's demise have been greatly exaggerated. Here he is.
Always greatly exaggerated.
I mean, I would say it's great to see you, Khalid, but it's good to hear your voice. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for some time we've got to just leave the avatar up. I've got stuff going on back here that I can't be on screen for a bit.
Yeah, we're aware of that. So, Khalid, I was going to go to Jeff for this question, but now you've joined us. This is actually a really good point for you to jump in. How does the inspirational radicalization model make traditional pre-attack detection methods that worked against the old, cellular planning model pretty much ineffective?
Well, you've got to understand, when you're talking inspirational, you've got people that are watching videos, you've got people that are reading different reports from other terror groups and going, hey, I want to do this. Hey, I want to be part of this. Hey, I want to jump in. That's where the lone wolf concept comes from. If you go back and look at how Al-Qaeda operated, they would always build up over months and months and months and put together a spectacular attack. Now what you're seeing is people that are radicalized in a span of 2 weeks, picking up knives, picking up guns, and going out and just ramming cars into crowds of people, getting out and starting to stab and shoot people. That's where inspirational radicalization comes from. It's not people that have been indoctrinated. The've been radicalized because of what they've seen. And when you look at what ISIS has been able to do in terms of their propaganda, you have got Hollywood level videos being made with music and action and everything. And the people are looking at it going, wow, I want to be part of this now.
That's a scary thought. So I think I saw somebody in the Guardians channel said that it was good to hear from you, but damn it, you always bring bad news. So all joking.
I will say, I can still tell he has those puffy cheeks. I can tell. I can hear it in his voice.
All right. So, Jeff, coming to you for the last question in segment number 4, and then we'll go to Ted right off the bat, segment 5. But given that the FBI has now confirmed over 1,700 active domestic terrorism investigations, what's the honest assessment of our counterterrorism capacity relative to the documented scale of the threat that we're facing?
I think our problem is, and it's kind of hard to get away from in a rules-based society, is we're treating terrorism like it's any other crime. But it's not. It's an act of war, and it needs to be treated as such. And yeah, I know that means, yeah, we got due process, we got this, we got that. But you know, if someone's going to start shooting up a school, their due process rights are not really high on my list of concerns from the get-go. If you can arrest them, fine, I guess. But when push comes to shove, the kinetic solution to the problem is usually the most expeditious.
And I could not disagree with that whatsoever. So we're moving to the fifth and final segment for our main topic tonight, the long war at home, connecting subversion, infiltration, and what comes next. The long war did not end when the troops came home. It followed them back, shifted its operational theater to the American interior, and is now being fought simultaneously through demographic pressure, ideological insurgency, institutional capture, and pre-positioned terror networks that are already inside the wire. America's being weakened not through a single catastrophic strike, but through a sustained multi-front campaign that drains resilience, fragments community trust, overwhelms law enforcement capacity, and leaves the population too demoralized and divided to mount a unified response when the kinetic phase of the operation begins. The question is not whether a 9/11 2.0 scenario can happen on American soil. The NCTC, the FBI, the Sufan Center, HST Today, and Crisis 24 have all confirmed the threat infrastructure is already in place. The question is whether Americans wake up in time to harden their communities, their institutions, and their minds before the window for effective response closes. So, Ted, as I mentioned, I'm going to come to you first on this. If you were advising the president right now on the single most urgent action to disrupt the internal destabilization campaign we've been describing tonight, what would it be and why?
I think he's got an opportunity tomorrow night in the State of the Union. I think he needs to put people on alert, say these things are real, not to scare everybody and cause a panic to the markets and all that, but we need to have a heart-to-heart talk of, come to Jesus talk, and get people prepared in his administration to act accordingly. And I think tomorrow would be a good time to talk to people about that. These are what we're looking at. I mean, you've got China and Iran and Russia and everything else going on, North Korea. I don't want to copy Xi Jinping, but he told his people, hard times are coming. You need to be prepared. We need to prepare the American people for something like this. We've seen it in small scales. 9/11 was a huge thing. It was a big shock to the nation. But with the tornadoes and floods in Florida, when a hurricane hits here, everything is run out within a 3-day period or 2-day period before the hurricane hits in these stores. And that scenario could be multiplied by 25 different towns, and it just escalates out from there. And so the president, to reassure the American people that if these things are imminent, that we are prepared, and encourage people to be prepared yourself.
So being a large animal vet for 29 years, this is the perfect time for me to ask you this question. When a hurricane's bearing down on us here in Florida, Ted, why is it the cows stop making milk? Because there's not a drop left on a shelf anywhere.
They go indoors, man. This is something to think about too. Bioterrorism. There's a disease called foot and mouth disease, another one called African swine fever that goes into hogs. If FMD came into this country, foot and mouth disease into this country, it would have an economic impact between 500 to 700, 800 billion dollars. Our exports would stop the moment it's announced, exports stop. Countries would shun our beef and a lot of our other stuff. It would have an impact throughout the farmer, the hay guy, the fertilizer, the meat packer, the grocery stores. It would take us years to recover from something like that. That is something that's easily weaponized. Happy to say there are programs out there preventing that or picking that up early. But those are the things that they need to have a real talk with the American people about some of these threats, and not to scare them, to educate them, because then if we're focused on a problem, the political politics kind of becomes less. And if we put an American agenda out there, and I think this is what Trump has done when he said this is the golden age of America, continue that out. What does that look like? You know, we're resilient and we're hardy in food security, health security, energy, all those things, and that we need to come together, not as Republicans or Democrats, but there should be an American agenda, what we're trying to accomplish, and together we can do this. Kind of like John Kennedy did with the space program and getting a person on the moon and back. That's the kind of leadership we need. He has that opportunity tomorrow, and I wouldn't berate the Democrats. They're not going to play anyway. So I would talk to the American people and say, we need to come together as Americans.
Yeah. So what's your podcast partner saying? Educate, motivate, activate. Did I get that right, or did I mess it?
Yeah, you're good, man. We're going to send you $20. John Martin.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Political Pirate Podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really is what we got to do. Educate, motivate, and activate people.
Yeah. I don't have Alzheimer's, but I do have some timers. Sometimes I remember and sometimes I forget. So Randy, I've got the perfect question for you. What's the faith community's specific role in building the cultural and communal resilience that is America's most important long-term defensive asset against the ideological insurgency?
Well, I think you just touched on what most of the problem is, right? We've moved away as a nation from that. And unfortunately, that is a big part of the problem, because when you look at the culture, the Christian culture, right, and what the Bible preaches, what Jesus preached, right, it's about doing things for the right reasons and in the right way. And then it's also the same thing where we got, if you're going to do work hard. Your name is on it. You should do the best you could, no matter what job you're doing. You do the very best job that you can every single time. And then it also lends to the part of, you try to help your neighbor. If your brother needs help, you give it to them. And so doing that brings communities closer together, doesn't it? It'll bring a family closer together. It'll bring a neighborhood closer together. And the more you see, then the community comes together. We've let all that unravel. That is our problem. Because if we were all, same thing in we're watching up in Congress right now. It doesn't matter what President Trump and the Republican, the part that we're talking about that follows what we're supposed to do, the Democrats are the exact opposite of it. It's no longer about what is good for the country, right? They all have taken that part, which in the Christian religion and the way that we're supposed to behave, we would be also taking care of our government, right? And in a way that is different than what we're doing. And of course, it wouldn't be doing what it's doing, because it was supposed to be submissive to God always as well. And you can see right now, there's not one part of our government that is submissive to God, period. And that is a problem. Because again, if the government's doing that and we're doing that, then we're all doing the right thing for the right reasons. And that builds cohesion. And then we stick together better. And just like Ben Franklin said, because we're in the same moment they were after the war. When Congress was trying to write the Declaration of Independence, and we're talking about before the Bill of Rights even came about, they were trying to write the Declaration of Independence. They couldn't get along. They couldn't agree. For 3 weeks, they argued back and forth about who had the right way, the better way, and nobody could agree on anything. And it was Ben Franklin, who previously wasn't as big as a Christian as he became in the end, because as he got older, he realized what is right and what is wrong. And the fact is, he said, listen, a year ago, in context, a year ago when he said that, we were still in the midst of the war. So he said, a year ago, we came in and prayed every day to God before we did our work. And we haven't done that since, and we haven't done it in the entire 3 weeks. So before we give up, because really everybody was about ready to give up and say, screw it, there's no way to do this because we can't all agree. And that is exactly the moment we're in right now. So what he submitted is maybe we should start praying again every day for our country, for what we're doing, and for, for everyone. So they started doing that. And guess what? They hashed out the Declaration of Independence. And by every account, is the best government document that's ever been written, period. Bar none. That's it. It is the pinnacle. And so the problem, again, is we don't do any of that. So what happens? Well, the community unravels, the neighborhood unravels, and even the family unravels. And that's exactly where we are today.
Yeah, I saw a video on X today, Randy, where there's this, crazy white liberal woman, probably a 2,000 milligram stare, at least 2,000 milligrams of SSRIs a day, screaming at this county council who opened the meeting with the Lord's Prayer and went off the deep end on how offended she was. And they weren't including people like her. How dare they not include her? It was brutal. My watch was going off like nuts, Randy saying.
Well, let's just take a look at that example, right? Because really, if we look at that at the core, what entities do that, right? Who is always mad, screaming, and all in uproar and all unhinged? It's Satan, and it's demonic. That's what it is. It's demonic. And they're never happy. They're always upset, and they're always screaming and puking and everything else. So that matches that behavior that we're talking about. And it's because she doesn't want to follow Jesus and God and doesn't feel accepted. Well, that's on her, because actually she is, if she turned over a new leaf and then went and repented and then started following Jesus. But she's following a different direction. And apparently she's comfortable with that. But we've seen it over and over in the last 10 or 15 years. And certainly since 2016. But again, we're really seeing it this last year with all these people just getting all kinds of upset and screaming. We've watched video after video on this show of the same thing, and they're all demonic. That's what the problem is, because it comes from evil and hate. And that's what I always said. You want to know the difference between what's from God and what's from Satan? If it's got to do with angry and hate and this, well, it's from Satan. But if it has to be with love and the acceptance we're actually talking about, and not what's being painted right now politically, that if it comes from a position of love, it's from God. If it comes from a position of hatred and anger, it's from the devil, period.
Amen, brother.
So let me get everybody over on another stage briefly. And it looks like I'm only missing Clee. Good stuff. Okay. I found the video while you were talking, Randy. Let me nuke this banner here so it's not in the way. This isn't in the brief, but let's listen to what this nutcase has to say. It's only 59 seconds long, and she's a school board member, by the way.
If you put prayer at the beginning of this meeting, I don't think that's a welcoming sign to the people who are in this room tonight. How much prayer do you need? How much God do you need? We say under God, we say it. Why do we need to say more? This, to me, is very disturbing. If I tell you I'm offended, I'm offended. I just don't understand why you're comfortable excluding people. Not everyone who is in this room tonight is Christian. And guess what? If you do this, we're going to have legal challenges. And guess what? It goes all the way to the Supreme Court because it's in the Constitution. I don't know why you need prayer to take this job seriously. But don't say this is going to unify when I'm telling you it will not. Why do you need this?
Okay, so first things first, for everybody in the audience, how many milligrams of SSRIs does she take every day? 1 for 1,000, 2 for 2,000, 3 for 3,000, and so on and so forth. I have it on good authority that typically you can only survive a few thousand milligrams a day, but some people build up an immunity to it. And when they're both crazy plus demonic, Lord only knows what the limit is for SSRIs. I'm going to give everybody a chance just to make a quick comment on that. And then I've got a question for Clete, and we'll move into the practical payoff. Brandy, I'm going to go right from top to bottom. I'll let you go first since you started us down this road.
I'm sorry. I guess I missed the question.
Comment on that video.
Oh, man, listen. One, she needs to go back and read the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, because she doesn't know what she's talking about. In fact, the school, when we first, until the early 1900s or late 1800s, we taught school with the Holy Bible. That's what we used. And our biggest mistake was ever pulling it off that and going into this garbage we do now, because it led us to the road we are right now. And if you listen to anybody in academia, most part, this is what they sound like, right? And they were the first ones to start writing out Christianity was academia. So these people have lost their mind. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And really, she probably shouldn't be a teacher or administrator, whatever her job is. She doesn't need to be teaching our youth. That is a fact, because she doesn't know the law. She doesn't know the Constitution. And in fact is, how much prayer do we need? Well, the Bible says pray incessantly. That means all the time. How much God do we need? Well, why do you think things are going wrong? It's because we let people like you kick them out of school. That's exactly why.
Randy, do you have your watch on by chance?
Well, it's definitely, no, I do not, but I do have my whoop on. We could probably check and it would be going on.
I was just curious if you drained the battery yet or not. Jeff, do you want to add any comments to that?
Well, she's mistaken in her interpretation of the Constitution. What she's referring to is the Establishment Clause, which means the state, the government will not establish a formal state religion. And that was put in because in Britain, you had to be Church of England, and that was it. There were still some Catholics, but they were basically treated like crap. And our founders said, no, we don't want to do that, because, we had Quakers, we had Presbyterians, we had, Church of England, we had everybody. And they said, we're not going to have an official government religion, not, one, one sect, whatever you want to call it. That is not to say that we were going to be a godless country, because if you look at the Declaration, you look at everything else, God is all in it. And they were all Christians, and they all expected this to be a Christian Judeo nation. So to now have revisionist history 250 years later is bullshit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And sorry, Greg Wasatch, but I'm hungry. I can't show your product to advertise it tonight, but I will mention it before we end the podcast. Ted, your chance to chime in on that crazy lady.
Two comments. One is the First Amendment. Yeah, I believe that's the freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So that school board, whoever's running that meeting, has that right to do that. Second thing is, I'll pray for her.
That's a very Christian response. Well done. Khalid, do you want to add anything to the comments on this crazy lady?
The thing I don't get, Chris, is I grew up, saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school and, school prayer and all of that. We've now been programmed this way that values don't matter, and values don't matter because those values are Christian values. And when you start creating a nation that believes that God doesn't need to be measurable there all the time, then you have lost your country. You've lost your morality, and you've lost your values. And if you look at what the kind of programming we're seeing on TV and the kind of things that people are doing in the US now, it's turning into a godless country because people want it that way. It's not about, building a country of values anymore. It's about building a country of people that want things and will do things that are against the law to get what they want.
Yeah, true story. Ooh, this is a hot one from Wasatch Wagon here. So we're almost wrapped up for segment number 5. And actually, Clede, next question's for you as it is. At what threshold of internal destabilization does the scenario switch from something that can be reversed through policy and community action to something that requires a fundamentally different kind of national response?
I think we're already there. The 4 years of autopen and the years of Obama have put America in a position now where it needs to decide whether the country needs to survive or people need to survive. It's hard for me to say that because being that I grew up there and it's still home to me. To see America going through what is going through right now because of the radical left and everything that people are trying to do to destroy that country, it's going to be very difficult to do anything without a kinetic response. I mean, we see it here in Pakistan. We're over religious in our country because of the crazy mullahs, and the opposite is much worse. I would rather have too much religion than no religion at all.
Fair statement. Fair statement. All right. So just quickly here, Randy, give me a number between 1 and 10.
8.
8. Okay. Jeff, number between 1 and 10.
4.
Ted,
5.
Khalid.
3.
All right. So this is kind of like The Price is Right, but it's a little bit different. It doesn't matter if you go with the number. So the number that I chose was 7, and Randy was the closest with 8. So you get the last question to wrap this thing up on the main topic, Randy. What is the single most important thing every American watching tonight should do in the next 30 days to harden themselves and their community against what we've laid out tonight?
Well, I'm going to say if you've got that network built out, it's time to start, you guys really buckling down and come up with a plan of what's going to happen, because a plan or a strategy, however you want to use that, you need to have several of them. That's going to be the most important thing, because it's, again, when this happens, none of us are probably going to be ready for it. We're not going to be sitting here going, well, I knew this was the exact moment when this was going to happen. I already got everything packed and I'm ready to go. It's just not the way things go. So, I would say have a plan. Have a plan of defense, have a plan of escape, have a plan of bugging out, have a plan of bugging in, have a medical plan, have a water plan, have a food plan. I mean, you need to really work out what you're going to do when something like this happens. And I think that's the most important part, because, again, it doesn't matter if you don't have anything or you have everything. If you're not ready and you don't have a plan when it happens, a lot of it goes to the wayside. So, and when you hit that moment of panic, you need to know what you're going to do when this happens. And that really is the biggest crux of it all. What are you going to do when this happens, and how well prepared are you for it right now?
If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So Randy is the man with a plan tonight. Well stated. So we're going to move into the practical payoff. This is a new section that I added a couple weeks ago to end the main topic, where we cover one skill, one item, and one mindset shift that you all should consider doing in light of the main topic. So I'm going to go one at a time. The skill that I put in the practical payoff tonight is get trained and stop the bleed and mass casualty response. In a coordinated multi-city attack scenario, professional emergency services are going to be overwhelmed within minutes, and your hands-on trauma skills become the difference between life and death for your family and your neighbors. So stop the bleed is the skill I'm going to throw out there. Khalid, one skill that people need to acquire post-haste.
One skill. The biggest skill you need to figure out is how you're going to handle this kind of a disaster. We're seeing what's happening in Mexico right now, and Mexico it's only an example of what's going to happen in the U.S., because this is just one cartel creating this kind of havoc over the death of their leader. When that comes to the U.S., are you mentally ready for that kind of trauma? Because it's not just physical trauma, it's mental trauma, it is emotional trauma that's going to freeze you in place. And it's one of those things that we teach our guys is, figure out how to deal with the shit and move on, and be practical about how you do it.
Fair enough. Good job. Ted, one skill that you recommend our audience acquires in the next 30 days?
I think what I would recommend is assessment. Check your surroundings. Hopefully you're prepared ahead of time, but then assess the situation. How bad is it? Is telecommunications out? Is all the electricity down? Is it partly down? And then move your resources and your family and all that to those areas where you can get a security buffer around you. And again, it comes back to what Khalid said. You got to be prepared ahead of time. You can't wait till after. And I think the more people do that, and again, listening to shows like yours and, reading, there's several books out there on this stuff, and, take it as a real exercise. And it's something, you can have fun with your family and say, hey, if this happens, where's the rally point? Where's the checkpoint? What are we going to do? Go through those scenarios, role play. And hopefully the best thing that can happen is you'll never use those.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Jeff, one skill that everybody needs to acquire.
I think it would be the ability to remain calm and to not panic, because when you panic, you make dumb decisions. And I think a lot of it is, I think the assessment one that one of my fellow panel members brought up is excellent. But in addition to that, you gotta assess what's going on and then figure out what am I going to do and what makes sense and what's unrealistic and what, because people may try to do things because they feel like they should, or, oh, it's the human thing to do. Well, it's not the human thing to do if it's going to get you killed in the process. You've got to be able to stay calm and assess your own limitations. What do you have? What can you do with it? And be realistic and say, okay, I might be able to save my neighbor. I'm not going to be able to save the whole town.
Yeah, true story. Well done. So we'll move on to the item. So the item that I chose is to build a communications independent go bag. So battery powered plus hand crank emergency radio, physical contact list. So dead tree format, pen and paper, prearranged family rally points, because in a coordinated attack scenario that targets cell phone infrastructure, it's highly likely that your smartphone is going to become a paperweight. And that doesn't mean that the grid, or call it the network, has to be attacked. It will be saturated. And the only people who'll be able to use it will be first responders on FirstNet. So Randy, I'll come to you first on this. What's one item that you recommend people acquire in light of tonight's topic?
I mean, I'm always going to go down to self-defense, right? At some point, you may have to defend yourself. And I'm just going to go with, you need to have a gun and a knife and know how to use them.
Fair enough. Jeff?
What was that?
One item that you recommend people acquire.
Well, acquire a compass and learn how to use it.
Yeah. There you go. That's a great item. Ted, your choice for an item.
Well, we're kind of prepared. So our go bag that has a lot of that stuff you guys just mentioned. So our kids have that. We have that. And so that our two dogs to scare off people, or no, to be alarms.
There you go. And don't forget to prep for your fur babies, of course. I don't want to have to tell Ted that because he's a veterinarian. But a lot of people don't, have preps queued up for their animals. Khalid, one item that people need to acquire before 9/11 2.0 hits us.
It's not something you need to acquire. It's something you need to develop. You need to find friends in different communities where if you have to bug out and you need a place to crash, you have some place you can go and you're not trying to figure it out while it's happening. Having a network of places to be able to move to when shit hits the fan is very important. And most people don't think about that.
Yeah, true story, true story. So the last item to cover before we wrap up the main topic is a mindset shift. So my mindset shift that I recommend for y'all in the audience is stop treating this threat as theoretical. Khalid's intelligence has been very clear on what the threat is, It's firsthand intelligence directly out of terrorist camps in Afghanistan. Then add in the National Counterterrorism Center confirming 18,000 known and suspected terrorists inside the wire. The FBI has over 1,700 active domestic terrorism investigations running right now. The SUFAN Center, as I've mentioned, is flagged 2026 as an elevated threat year. The question is not if, it is when, and your community needs to be organized before that answer arrives. So stop treating the threat as theoretical is my recommendation for a mindset shift. Randy, what are your thoughts as far as people's mindset changing?
Well, one of the things I always like that I've picked up a lot and I've, used over a long period of my time of life. And to me, and it's a mindset shift, right? It has to be, because these aren't always easy moments. In fact, most of them are not. But when you get to a moment, there's nothing that you can, if it's something that you can't do anything about, then just do what comes next, because there's always a next step. Now, it's going to be dependent on what your situation is, but even in this thing, if you have to enact your plan next, if something's going down that you have no control over and you can't change it, you just do what comes next. Do the next step, and then follow that step to the next step, and et cetera, et cetera.
That is great advice. That's a fantastic mindset shift. Jeff?
I think mine would be, don't kid yourself. It can happen to you. We see all these terrorist events. We see them on TV. We see them around the world, and they always happen over there, or they always happen to someone else. Well, guess what? They can happen to you. And for a whole lot of people, they are going to happen to them. And you need to be in the frame of mind. It's almost like if you drive a car and you think you're never going to get into a car accident, good on you if you don't, but the odds are you are. At some point, you're going to be in a car accident. Just how bad is it going to be? How are you going to handle it? How are you going to try to avoid it? Defensive driving, things like that. It's the same kind of thing. Just like when you go through an intersection and the lights turn green for you, you always look at the other traffic, the ones that are supposed to have stopped. And then you'll see some idiot blow through the intersection at 70 miles an hour because he's running the red. Well, you've got to have that mindset when you're out and about. I mean, when you're at the grocery store, when you're at the Home Depot, you've got to look at your surroundings, look at everybody around you, and in your own mind, prioritize and say, okay, if one of these guys is bad, which one do I think is it? Or if there's two, and then if they start doing something, where do I go? What do I do? And you've got to kind of run those games through in your mind all the time.
I occasionally go to the grocery with Cindy, especially like if we're stocking up on a lot of stuff and it's heavy and it's got to be carried. I do the exact opposite. If we're at Sam's, I look around and I determine who I would go to war with, who are my people, that stand a chance against terrorists. It's pretty disturbing, by the way. We estimated this one time we were in Sam's that there were 800 people. This is in Daytona Beach, 800 people inside the store. And I could count on one hand the number of people that I looked at and thought, that's my guy right there. I'm going to war with that guy. One hand out of 800, pretty brutal. Ted, your thoughts on a mindset shift?
Well, that just changed my mind right there. That was pretty scary. I liked what Randy said. It reminded me of General Schwarzkopf. Do what's right and then do something. And then if you forget the first one, do the second one, and just do that over and over again. But I think the biggest thing would be an attitude, change in attitude, being Christian, believing in the 10 Commandments and all the teachings of Jesus. I think sometimes you revert back to the Old Testament and, assess immediately, as Jeff was saying. And, you may be shooting first and asking questions second, but you have to be ready to act. You can't, sit down and do a counseling session and see what this person really is up to. You don't have time for that because it's security for you and your family for propagating the next generation.
Good answer, Ted. Good answer. Khalid, you get final swing.
The problem we've got right now is too many people, and this is gonna come off as me being an absolute asshole, but put your fucking phones down when you're outside. They are the worst thing that you can have in your hand because it takes your attention away from what's going on around you, and those split seconds that it takes to get that phone back in your pocket when something happens, that matters. Number two, when you see an accident happen, don't video it. Go and help somebody. Stop thinking that you need to post something on social media to get likes or get views because, well, someone else hasn't seen it yet. So let's make this happen. The problem we have as a society is we become too focused on me, too focused on the individual. And we're not looking at the people around us. We're not looking at what's happening around us. And because of that, our security level has gone way down. Back in the old days, I mean, when we went shopping, there was no such thing as mobile phones in your hands. And you made a point of putting things in the shopping cart so that your hands were free in case something happened. Now we're carrying things around and we got a phone in our hand at the same time. How do you defend yourself in that situation? Get out of that mindset that you need that something on your phone is more important than what's happening in real life around you.
Yeah, I just want to add one quick thing for my friend Tony Blauer, who's the preeminent world expert on sudden violence. When you are attacked, the very first thing that you will autonomically do is clamp down on whatever's in your hands. So if you have your phone in your hand, your instant reaction when you get hit is to flinch, but grab a hold of it. So as a general rule of thumb, after Tony taught me that, if I'm in public, and let's say we went, to Tanger Outlet or something like that, which is a very rare event, but we were there and we've been buying some stuff. I carry everything in my left hand. My right hand, which is my predominant hand, is always free. So with that being said, that wraps up our main topic, but don't go anywhere. We're going to get into a short sit rep. However, I don't want to tie up everybody on the panel. So Randy, Jeff, Ted, if y'all want to call it a night, now's the time. And I know Khalid and I at least will be a 20, 30-minute sit rep. Jeff, appreciate your insight and per usual. Ted and Randy, it's your call. If y'all want to stay with us, you're welcome to. It's up to you. You're on mute. You're on mute, Randy.
Yeah, I'm on mute. But yeah, I've got to go to dinner. The bell just went off. So
you can't run a
perfect
V8
timing.
You can't run a V8 on a gallon of gas. Go eat.
No,
Randy.
you cannot.
All right. We'll see you on Wednesday.
How long is that section?
20, 30 minutes max.
All right. I'm probably going to head out too, but I wanted to add one thing to that last thing you said.
Yeah, sure.
About be prepared. I've worked with the animals for, 30, 40 years of my life. They have the basic instinct, fight or flight. And I think people need to go back to their basic instincts, go by your gut feeling, assess, I was just over in Italy and we were at the Olympic Village and these guys, they're from Africa. They came up to me and they were trying to give me stuff and distract me. I said, get away from me. I said, get away from me, get away from my wife. And so we were kind of, because of the fight or flight, these things can happen. And I just says, So we're being proactive. And I think if people have their animal instincts, it's okay to have them. God gave them to us for a reason. It's a survival instinct. With that, I'm going to take off. Thank you. And hope to talk to you soon. God
Absolutely.
bless.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ted. Have a good night. All right. So let's get over to another screen here, Khalid. There we go. All right. So I've got a bunch of stuff bookmarked, Khalid. Of course, none of it's in order, but it'll be a productive use of our time as far as the sit rep is concerned. The first one's pretty interesting because I know that you're going to have input on this. Get us back over on the other stage. All right. Rocket launchers among military grade equipment seized in raid that killed notorious Mexican cartel leader El Mencho. So rocket launchers capable of shooting down planes, man pads, were among the arsenal seized by Mexican military forces in the daring raid that killed notorious Jalisco New Generation cartel boss El Mencho. Special forces also seized armored cars and heavy weaponry, which are often used on the battlefield rather than in law enforcement missions, as drug kingpin El Mencho was killed and the resort town of Puerto Vallarta fell under siege. So I want to preface your comments first on this, Clede, by saying I reached out to Victor Avila today. That article goes on to say, postulate that the man pads and other weapons didn't just come in from Afghanistan. Some of them actually go back to the Fast and Furious debacle in 2012. So for those of you who don't recognize the name Victor Avila, or it kind of rings a bell, but you can't place him, Victor Avila was one of 2 DEA agents that were ambushed by cartel members south of Mexico City. His partner, Agent Zapata, died in his arms. Hundreds of rounds were fired. It's a miracle that Victor survived. I met Victor when we were working together with Tom Holman on the Border 911 project a couple years back. And it's amazing that he survived that attack. When I reached out to him today, Clede, I said, give me your thoughts on this person suggesting that some of these weapons like man pads date as far back as the 2012 Fast and Furious. Do you want to know what his response was? Absolutely.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
And that's direct from, a hardcore agent. The quick background to it before Khalid talks about the weapons that came from Afghanistan to Mexico and back into America is that him and his partner, Agent Zapata, they were given an order right around midday, and their superior said, I want you to go to this meeting, and it was somewhere south of Mexico, and there's a highway, I think it's Highway 58 if memory serves me right. It's called the Highway of Death, and nobody travels on the Highway of Death but cartels. And the only way to get to where they needed to be was to take the Highway of Death. And so they start heading south. They're out of town, they're in the back country. And that's when they were interdicted by several cartel vehicles. And like I said, shot up. It's an absolute miracle that Victor survived, but he's an awesome, awesome dude to know. He's back in DC right now working on an undercover project that's somewhat related to his background that should be interesting. But Khalid, tell the story of the man pads that Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers and Basil Boz broke during August, September of 2024 during the presidential election, the run up to the presidential election.
You're talking about the man pads that were smuggled in to assassinate Donald Trump.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I was just having this conversation on one of our Element channels. People are really confused about what actually happened. When you look at how weapons are moved to the cartels, number one, the cartels all went to the Ukraine, and they all fought and got training in the Ukraine. So when they were coming back, they stopped in Afghanistan and they met up with IRGC, they met up with the Taliban, and they bought a pissload of weapons. Of the $7 billion in weapons that the U.S. left behind in Afghanistan, $1.5 to $2 billion in weapons have gotten back into either Mexico or the U.S. And we are talking high-grade military weaponry that will be used not only in 9/11 2.0, but you're seeing them being used in the cartels right now in what's happening in Mexico. The problem you've got right now is, and we saw this when the border was shut down, and there was all that hubbub about airports being shut down because the fear was that the man pads were being activated, that Iran was going to try and take out an airplane at that point in time. The IRGC is now in full control of Hezbollah, full control. What that means is that Hezbollah sitting in Venezuela and sitting in Mexico now have IRGC commanders running the show. They're not calling the shots anymore. IRGC is. So what we're seeing is the potential of those man pads being used now, and not just the man pads, but the new weapons that they bought from Russia, $500 million in weapons they bought from Russia after the attack, the 12-day war with Israel. Those weapons, some of them have gotten into the cartel's hands. You can literally shoot down an airplane. They have shoulder mount cannons now that they can shoot down airplanes with. The level that we are dealing with of type of weaponry that are in the enemy's hands is nothing like what we've seen before. And the level of training they've gotten on it, because they've gone and they've played mercenary in all these unneeded battles in different countries, has given them the ability and the understanding of how to use them. For example, CYNG's women's wing has been specifically trained on drone warfare, and they are masters with drones. They put militaries to shame the way they can operate a drone. Where'd they learn it? In the Ukraine.
Yeah, I heard that. Just to be clear, so the man pads that Khalid's is talking about, shoulder mounted, surface to air, short range weapon, 1.5 pound explosive, heat seeking. The optimum time to use them against a plane is shortly after it takes off, because it has a full load of fuel. But you got to take 2 engines out at a time. And as Khalid shared before, the 9 man pads that Doc Pete got the initial intelligence on are a fraction of what's actually inside the country. The number's probably closer to 50 plus man pads. And that brings a whole new level of complexity to the threat as far as 9/11 2.0 is concerned. You know what, Khalid? I got all, excited to get into the sitrep tonight. You know what I forgot to do? 3, 2, 1. One of my favorite things is to play the Carnival roar as we move from one segment to another. So just another quick reminder, carnival.com. These are our premier sponsor. Everything American, 100% American, no bullshit in their meat at all. As good as the best possible quality you can imagine. If you sign up for a subscription with Carnival and you forward that to support@survivaldispatch.com, I will give you a free Guardian membership. So it's not just a matter of extending your 30 days. From now on, when you sign up for Carnival subscription, you get a free Survival Dispatch Guardian subscription. And I'd love to show you this this jerky from my friend Greg Wasatch at Wasatch Wagyu. But this stuff is crack cocaine. It's unbelievable, off the chain. Again, 100% American. It's Greg's cattle. It's his Wasatch cattle. They are 100% Wasatch or Wagyu, pardon me. WasatchWagyu.com, discount code SD25. I'll put a link in the live chat next time Khalid's speaking. And if you're not a Survival Dispatch Guardian and you just don't have time to get into our community where there's 12, 15,000 messages a week that goes through our private element server, I just introduced a new package for y'all. It's called SDN Intel Alerts. It's only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. Go to survivaldispatch.news, hit the membership link at the top of our homepage. Scroll down right in the middle of the page. You'll see SDN Intel Alerts. You can pay annual. You get 2 months free. So that's why it's $49.99. You'll get the daily SDN Intel Alert that right now only goes to Guardians, which is based on our main topic of the night, by the way. And you'll also be enrolled in Survival Dispatch's emergency notification system. So SDNs, these are SHTF alerts that are more reliable and more comprehensive than anything the feds send out on the emergency broadcast system, which I know has been named EBA, if memory serves me right. But with that being said, Khalid, let's move on to the next one here. And we might go through some of these relatively quickly just because I want to hit primarily on the fires that are going right now. But this is 27 minutes ago. Breaking Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says we were on the verge of discovering whether aliens truly exist, meaning us, the general public. And here's a video of it. Watch as Secretary of War Hegseth says that his people are currently working on declassifying information about aliens, UFOs, extraterrestrial life, and unidentified aerial phenomena. 47 seconds.
3 days ago, President Trump directed you to begin the process of identifying and releasing the UFO and UAP files. I mean, did you ever think that you would be the Secretary of War in charge of potentially declassifying extraterrestrial life, the American people,
I did
the
not.
world?
I did not have that on my bingo card at all.
And are you prepared to do that now?
Of course. I mean, we've got our people working on it right now. I don't want to oversell how much time it will take. Right? We're digging in. We're going to be in full compliance with that executive order, eager to provide that for the president. So there'll be more coming on that as far as the process of what we'll do.
And what sort of time frame? Do you have any sense for how long this is going to take?
I don't have a time frame for you yet, but stand by. We'll get it for you.
And do you give us the latest on what's happening?
What?
Do you think
I'm going to go ahead and pause it there. Clede, do you want to comment on the extraterrestrial stuff and all?
Well, I'm a little surprised with Donald Trump. When he had Obama saying that, you know, there are aliens, and that was an intelligence leak, he could have, you know, just kind of fawned it off and said, well, we'll deal with that when we get to it. But I don't really want to comment for the simple reason because there's too much out there that we don't know. And there's a lot we're going to find out very quickly. And extraterrestrial life, everyone said exists. People have seen UFOs, and I don't think I don't think it's an impossibility anymore.
Yeah, neither do I. So I just found this. This wasn't even in my bookmarks, but I want you to comment on it. This is from earlier this morning. The Islamic regime's communication system has been hacked again. Iranians in occupied Iran are reporting receiving the following message on their phones. The president of the United States is a man of his word. What can you tell us about the regime's comm systems being hacked?
Well, the regime's comm systems are very weak, to be very honest. Hacking Iran is child's play. It's like what the 1980s Department of Defense computers were like. That's what the IRGC is using right now. And getting into their comms networks, getting into their computer systems, it's a piece of cake. We saw this during the protests as well. There were a lot of messages being sent. We saw a bunch of those messages coming in from people that we have inside of Iran. They were forwarding the messages to us. You had Israelis that were sending messages in Persian, video messages in Persian, where they were talking to the Iranian people and saying that the only way you're going to collapse this regime is by standing up and fighting to collapse the regime. People don't realize how much motivation that is. When you get a message on your phone in your language saying that you can do something about the problem in your country, just by coming out on the street, all of a sudden people start to come out. And what you're seeing right now is, even if Donald Trump does not attack Iran kinetically, you can play psychological warfare on a very, very different level. And what you can achieve with psychological warfare, you can't do with a bomb.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because Wednesday's topic is the Psy War. So
Yeah.
moving on to the next one. This one hits close to home for me. Doc Pete is a friend of mine, fellow Texan. This person says, Greg Abbott had my support in the past, but no more. All that has been allowed under his watch is unforgivable. Texas deserves better. We must not allow this Muslim invasion take hold in our state. Trump is wrong on his endorsement. He isn't listening. Some clown at TPUSA, Tyler something or other, made a bunch of really snarky comments about Doc Pete on the weekend. And Sam, who is part of Doc's team, released the goods. This guy was basically a whiny bitch, saying that Doc Pete doesn't have enough money to win and don't waste your vote and vote for Greg Abbott, who's a WEF clown, like complete clown. And Doc Pete's the exact opposite. For those of you who don't know my friend Doc Pete, 39-year Army veteran, lieutenant colonel, hence the LTC, one of only 6 Green Berets ever to become a trauma flight surgeon while in the service. He left because he refused to stick that thing in his troops' soldiers as a matter of principle. I'm glad that he did. He's running for governor of Texas. He will turn Texas around and save the state. The United States will go the way that America goes. So on Tuesday, March the 3rd, which is the primary in Texas, I'm pretty sure all y'all out there who are watching that live in Texas are going to go vote for Doc Pete, and that's great. I need you to do the same thing that we asked you to do last year on November the 5th, and that is take a minimum of one person with you next Tuesday who does not normally vote. It's the only way that we can win elections and make them too big to rig. You got to take the people in your family or circles with you to the polls, the ones who don't normally vote. It's the only way we can do it. And, you know, I don't care if this sounds alarmist or not. The only way we can save Texas is Doc Pete. The only way we can save America is Texas. And that's all there is to that. So I'll move on from there. I want to hear your thoughts on this one, Khalid. This was posted 11 hours ago. Satellite pics just dropped. Over 60 U.S. warplanes swarming a key forward base in Jordan right now. F-35 Stealth Beast, F-22 Raptors. Attack jets triple the normal count. Cargo planes flooding in with drones. Helos and air defenses. This isn't a drill. Give me your breakdown on that, Khalid.
Let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East.
Khalid, can you hear me? You cut out. Khalid, we've got no audio from you, brother. Khalid, you're back.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you the entire time until now.
Okay. What I was saying is let's talk about what's going on with U.S. bases in the Middle East right now. Qatar, Saudi have literally been emptied out of all military equipment. They've been moved to Portugal. They've been moved to Greece. The fear right now is that Donald Trump is talking about a limited strike on Iran.
Okay.
A limited strike means you're going to try and take out their nuclear facilities, or you're going to try and take out a portion of their infrastructure or their government. No matter what you do, Iran has already said that we, along with our allies, along with all of our asymmetric pieces, are going to launch full war. That means that every U.S. base, every property that Donald Trump owns, this is something we've heard directly from IRGC. Every property that Donald Trump owns, every property that any of his children own, is on their target list. They have activated an armed Hezbollah. They have activated an armed Hamas. They are ready to go into long-term warfare. There was an article in an Iranian newspaper, we posted it on our X handle the other day, where they said Jordan is their number one target. That if the U.S. decides to attack, Jordan is the number one target because the amount of hardware sitting on the runways, on the tarmacs, at Jordanian bases is outrageous. It's way beyond what has ever been deployed. We are looking at well more than what we ever saw for the Iraq invasion in 2003. So this is not a one strike and out. We are talking about a weeks long conflict inside of Iran. That's not good for the US. That's not good for Europe. That's not good for the Muslim world, because Iran will target everybody. They will target everyone. Anyone who has any kind of tie to the US is gonna get bombed. So what kind of weaponry the US uses is going to change things. If we see direct energy weapons used on Iran, then it's game over. The fight will end very quickly. But if they decide to go in and bomb just a little bit, the response from Iran is going to be full-scale war. And full-scale war means we may literally move into World War III. You've got Russia and China backing up Iran. You have Russia and China backing up Iran. The potential of this escalating very quickly is outrageously high. We've also heard another thing, and I'm gonna mention it here because it's something that was said to me by a U.S. military official yesterday, that Iran alone is not the target. Iran alone is not the target. And I'm not going to go any farther than that in explaining what else they're talking about targeting. But this is something that the U.S. is talking about, not just one country. They're looking at two or three countries in targeting. So this is going to be a protracted fight. And I don't know how the American people are going to respond to another foreign war.
Yeah, no kidding. So moving on to the next one here. I haven't listened to this. This just popped up in my feed as I was going through my X bookmarks from MJ Truth Alter. Broke my heart to hear him say this. I don't know how long I'll be around. I got a lot of people gunning for me. Lord protect this man.
But Americans like Lakin and Grant and Javier, Joshua, Rocky, Rachel, Kayla, these are great people, and we're never going to forget them. I'll never forget them. I don't know how long I'll be around. Got a lot of people gunning for me, don't I? Huh? But I will not forget them. I'm never going to forget them. And I just think you're among the most brave people. I meet a lot of brave people. I meet warriors. I give out congressional medals of honor. People recommend, like these two in front of me are so wonderful, but they recommend, and I meet the greatest people. But this is a group of people that, for whatever reason, I just feel maybe the warmest about. So at least you have one friend, and we don't understand why you don't have many. And
Yeah. So just for the record, and this is from Doc Pete, going back to the election time frame, the two highly publicized attempts to assassinate Donald Trump in Butler, PA, and in South Florida were 2 out of 7 attempts that year. There were at least another, or 2 out of 9, pardon me. There were at least 7 more that weren't, blasted out to the media. But Khalid, I want to get your opinion on this because you know this area. Bridget Gabriel says this should terrify every single American. It's time to wake up. Shocking. Muslims storm Dearborn streets calling for global Islamic revolution to crush American life. 24 seconds. So, Khalid, if I say what's on my mind, I'll get us nuked on a whole bunch of platforms. But, like that's a real world BFE right there.
Hands down. Look, Chris, this is my problem with these people. You moved to America because it was the land of opportunity, and now you want to change America. Why did you move there to begin with? I mean, I always come back to the same thing. If you're so unhappy where you are, buy a plane ticket, go back to where you came from, and try and change that country. Because if you look at the Muslim world, people like this wouldn't be living anymore. And I'm sorry to say it that way, but in a country like Pakistan, he would be disappeared forever. And trying to do that in America, again, I'm going to sound like an asshole when I say this, but I really think people need to stop caring about being politically correct. Yeah. When someone talks shit, give them the shit they want because they're asking for it. When you ask for it, give it to them. And America's become so politically correct because of all the soy boys, because of all the programming, because of all the ways that they say, we want to do this and we want to do this and we should change this and we should be accepting of everyone. No, that's not what America was. America was accepting of people that accepted America, not people that
melting pot. Yep, the melting pot. We've got Bike Week starting here next week. And for as long as I can remember, going back decades, there's always been a T-shirt sold by one or more vendors at Bike Week that says "Talk shit, get hit."
Yep,
that definitely applies. So let's pivot to Mexico a little bit before we wrap up tonight, because tomorrow night, Khalid and I will have an extended situation report for y'all. But from American Papa Bear, Mexican cartels have taken American tourists hostage. This comes on the heels of a major cartel leader being taken out. Pray for them. So not a great video, but if memory serves me right, that's at the airport in Puerto Vallarta. Let me go to this next one, Khalid, and we'll end on this one because it's a big deal. The alliance between Mexican drug cartels and the Islamic regime in Iran is a direct threat to the U.S. and all of Latin America. The Islamic regime's IRGC works directly with drug cartels in Latin America, enabling money laundering, fentanyl smuggling, and human trafficking in the region, affecting the security of the U.S. southern border. The IRGC has collaborated with Mexican cartels on both American and Mexican territory numerous times. In 2011, the Quds Force branch of the IRGC and the Las Zetas cartel plotted the failed assassination of Saudi ambassador in Washington, D.C. In late 2024, the Quds Force plotted to eliminate the Israeli ambassador to Mexico. Between 2024 and 2025, the IRGC again attempted to recruit Mexican cartel-linked individuals to target U.S. officials and Iranian dissidents on American soil. So let me give you all the quick backstory to this, and then Clede will fill it in. So when I started Survival Dispatch News 4 years ago, one of my first guests, my good friend Don Mann, who you heard me mention earlier in tonight's podcast. So he was in the Navy for 20 years. He was a SEAL. Then he was in the CIA for 23 years after that. And we were on the topic of sleeper cells in America. And Don said, well, you know, in the early 1990s, we were tracking 300 Hezbollah cells in America. And Hezbollah, as Cleve will tell you, there's Hezbollah in the Middle East that's funded by the IRGC. And then there's Hezbollah for the rest of the world, which is called Unit 910. And don't be that asshole who sends me hate mail and says that there's more than one unit Hezbollah worldwide. No shit, Batman. I'm aware of that. It's a name that they've given everybody outside of the Middle East who's part of Hezbollah, because Unit 910 is tasked with funding its own operations. So for 30 plus years now, Hezbollah has embedded themselves with Mexican and Central American cartels and gangs. They look and sound identical to them. They speak Spanish with the same accent. They're literally joined at the hip and have been for quite some time. Why would Hezbollah be in cooperation with the cartels? Well, because they make a lot of money off the same things that the cartels do: child sex trafficking, human trafficking, fentanyl, cocaine, and everything else that they're into. And I got some intel that had not been confirmed, and I mentioned it to Khalid, and I said, hey, I'm hearing that the cartels and Hezbollah are being told by the IRGC to start attacking targets on our side of the border. And then somebody else came to me with it, that it's a trusted source. And I mentioned that to Clede. And I said, well, we got 2 sources now. Clede says to me, no, you got 3 sources, because I've got intel as well. And I've got some information coming in right now that I'll share tomorrow night, because I don't have the full picture yet. But it's pretty much imminent that you're going to see attacks on our side of the border from Hezbollah and the Mexican cartels. This is not 9/11 2.0. These will be, let's call them attacks of opportunity, for lack of a better term. But it's entirely possible that we bomb Iran tonight or tomorrow night or this week, and the Mexican cartels and Hezbollah start attacking targets on our side of the border this week. And at that point in time, all hell will break loose and all bets are off. Clede, I'm going to let you wrap up tonight and set it up for where we pick up tomorrow night. And for the people who aren't aware of all this, tie together Iran, the fact that the IRGC runs Iran, not the mullahs, and their connections or their ties to Hezbollah in Mexico, and that threat that's posed to us here in America.
Well, if our audience remembers, I did a 3-part series on Dead Drop Intel on Iran's embedding into Venezuela, and that was before Maduro was taken out. That embedding is still there. That's the first thing you need to understand, is they've created a terror base literally a few hundred miles away from the U.S., where they can attack from Venezuela. They can move forces from Venezuela into Mexico and attack from Mexico into the U.S. That's the first thing people need to understand. The second thing you need to understand is the IRGC not only controls Iran, but they control the Iranian economy. All the money, all the shops that run inside of Iran are controlled by the IRGC.
Hey, Khalid, I need to interrupt and get you to comment on this. From Anonymous TV, Daily Iran News, both saying the same thing. Unverified sources claim that Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is dead or in serious condition after an alleged attack on his residence. I'm not really familiar with either one of these accounts. Is there any chance that that could be truthful, or is it just subterfuge? Because there's been a shit ton of subterfuge on X lately.
It's all rumor intelligence, people putting their
Rumor.
hopes and dreams out.
Okay.
Because Ali Khamenei, yes, he is ill, but he's already nominated his son to take over the country.
Okay.
Currently, the foreign minister, Ali Larjani, I think is his name, is in control of Iran. He's running Iran, and the mullahs have gone into hiding. The thing people need to understand is that Iran is we show you something and something else is going on in the background. So you see a mullah government, but it's actually the IRGC running the country. They run the economy, they run the government, they run the decision-making process. They decide who gets what. Every company that runs Iran is laundering money for the IRGC. So that's something that people need to understand to begin with. Secondly, and I've said this a couple of times in our element chats, $80 million is paid to the cartels in Mexico every month by the IRGC. Think about that. Iran has enough money to pump $80 million into cartels. What do you think that $80 million is for? It's not there just so they can pay somebody to take care of, little things here or there. They are building an army right on the US border.
Mhm.
And that army will be activated when they're ready to go in and take over different areas inside the US. The other thing that people that a lot of people don't understand is that there are 28 cities right now that have more cartel control than they have government control, meaning that the cartels have bought politicians, they've bought police officers, they've bought police chiefs, and I'm not talking on the border. I'm talking in the northern part of the U.S. I'm talking Midwest. Tomorrow, hopefully, if I can find the map, we'll share the map tomorrow during the broadcast, so you can see how many cities inside the U.S. are already under control of the of cartels. Those cartels are working arms of foreign powers. It's like we said in November when we broke the intel about the IRGC linking up with Antifa and TDA. They were paying TDA for assassinations. They were paying TDA to carry out mayhem-like events, and they were paying Antifa through TDA to create opportunities for those events to happen. And that's exactly what we're seeing in Mexico right now. Is you have unrest in Mexico, and the guy, the kingpin that was killed in Mexico, everyone has said this, is he didn't have control of the cartel anyway. Someone else was running the cartel. He was just a figurehead. So the killing of that leader wasn't really that important to CJNG, but it gave them the opportunity to create the mayhem that they needed to create inside of Mexico. And all of southern Mexico has now cartel roadblocks. The Sinaloans and the CJNG are now fighting each other actively. The Delta Force team that the CNGs have created, that are just like the U.S. Delta Force, are patrolling streets and cities inside of Mexico right now and openly killing whoever they want to. They're taking over tankers. They are taking over big rigs and using them to block roads. How many times, Chris, have we brought up the fact that all of these immigrants that are coming into the U.S. and driving big rigs are not there just for logistics? They're there for something else. We're seeing it happen in Mexico right now. And if you're not paying attention, and we've said this over and over, if you're not paying attention to what's going on around the world, you're not getting ready for what's going to happen in America. We see it in Pakistan. We see it in Afghanistan. We see it in Syria. We see it in Mexico. even right now, literally 3 days ago, the spokesman of ISIS Central called out Jolani and said flat out that we want to assassinate him. He is an agent of the United States. So now in the last 6 days, you have seen Syrian army who are jihadis themselves being beheaded by ISIS, the same ISIS that was just released from prisons by Jolani himself. So when you talk about what can happen and how fast it can happen, you won't even realize how quickly the temperature changes, and you'll be caught out. And it's like what we saw here in Pakistan. It was a very quiet night, and all of a sudden Pakistan decided we're gonna bomb into Afghanistan, and we hit 7 targets, and 96 TTP, ISKP, Al Qaeda commanders are now dead. That is a huge shot.
That's a big number.
Add to that the fact that Iran was saying that when the U.S. attacks us, we're going to move command and control to Afghanistan. Now IRGC is scared to move to Afghanistan with Pakistan bombing Afghanistan, that by mistake their command and control centers could get hit. So by again bombing Afghanistan when they weren't ready for it, we've created another gap. We've created another problem for the jihadis around the world, because it's something they weren't ready for. It was something they couldn't fight back against. And because of that, we've destabilized an Iranian plan. We've destabilized an Afghani plan. We've destabilized a Syrian plan. And all of this we'll be talking about tomorrow night. But this is what we need to understand, that when you start talking about people that are not doing it, I saw a video on X the other day where a woman was saying, why aren't the Muslims complaining about these radical Muslims? We are. But we're not just complaining, we're doing something about it. We're fighting them, we're killing them. You're just not seeing it on your broadcast mainstream media because your mainstream media doesn't want to show it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Cleet, I do want to share one more thing. Just I forgot about this, is just so everybody who wasn't aware is aware. On the left is the photo they want you to see of Austin Tucker, the most recent psycho who tried to get into Mar-a-Lago to try and kill President Trump. The right is the latest image of him that the media doesn't want you to see. The media is lying to you all the time. The takeaway, another mentally ill transgender. We have an epidemic of transgender violence. These are extremely mentally ill people. And it's unbelievable that we're even having this conversation. So quick things to wrap up. Number one, we do not get any affiliate commission from Carnival. These guys are extremely generous. We get a stipend from them that helps us defer our expenses between software subscriptions, ClearStar background checks, server hosting. We're in the neighborhood of about $15,000 a month in recurring expenses for that stuff. Carnival.com. Sign up for a subscription, and I'll give you a free Survival Dispatch Guardians membership. Here's all that's left of Greg Wasatch's jerky. I'm sorry, Greg. I try to keep some in here so I can show your product out, but I mean, I'm a weak man. You put crack cocaine in front of me like this, I'm going to eat it. WasatchWagyu.com, best freaking jerky in the whole world. WasatchWagyu.com. Link will be in the live chat in a second. SD25 gets you 25% off. And for those people who don't want to be part of our community, which is, 12, 14, 15,000 posts per week on our Element server, which is an extremely secure server. It's my server. It's built my way. And I put it this way, if Big Brother doesn't like our server, the only thing they could do is maybe order the provider to cut our internet. But I've got 3 system images that go to 3 offshore data centers every day. It'd take me a matter of hours to spool it back up again. Censorship industrial complex is ramping back up again. JJ Carroll banned from Facebook. We've been deplatformed as far as streaming is concerned. It's coming. They're going to censor all of us like they did during Charlie 19. So I wanted to be ahead of the curve as far as preparing that's concerned. Regular Guardian membership gets you everything. $9.99 a month or $99.99 a year. You get all 20 of our channels. You get the daily SDN intel alerts. You get the full daily sitrep situation reports. You get enrolled in the SDN system, Survival Dispatch and Emergency Notification System, where we send SHTF alerts to your email, to our Substack, to our SDN's channel on Element, our SDN's channel on Signal, as well as POClink radios. But if you don't want to be in the community because you don't have time, but you want all the other stuff, you want the daily alerts, you want the emergency alerts, sign up for our new SDN Intel alerts. It's only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. Whether you go Guardian or Intel alerts, when you pay for an annual membership, you get 2 months completely for free. You can't beat it with a stick. And we appreciate the support for that stuff very, very much, especially our sponsors, Carnivalt and Wasatch Wagyu. Let me see here. Khalid and I will be back tomorrow evening, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Comprehensive terrorism sitrep, tying together Iran, IRGC, Hezbollah, and cartels into one big situation report. Wednesday evening will be the next episode in our long war series, and it's the Psy War Nation. The theme's psychological warfare as a primary weapon. And boy, I've got some heavy hitters coming on. I'm trying to remember who's coming on Wednesday night. It's escaped me for a second. Mike Glover will be with us Thursday night this week. JJ Carroll will be with us Friday night. The next few weeks, I've got some rock star panelists that'll be joining us. I think that's it. I want to thank all y'all who support Survival Dispatch News, especially our Guardian subscribers, our sponsors. You guys are the reason that we can work 16, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. No exaggeration. Anybody who works with Khalid and me knows that that's actually understating the amount of hours that we put in. But between now and tomorrow night, I would appreciate it very much if you would please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our troops. God bless America. And enjoy the closing video. It's a brand new one. Khalid and I will see.